This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
The Browns are an extremely good football team right now. They're playing at a high level. They're one of the teams that everybody has caught on to that you don't want to play. And while it's been interesting to see the national media finally catch up to this Browns team that we've known about, I mean, basically since they beat San Francisco, we've been talking about the Browns at this level since like week 5. It's interesting to see everybody kind of catch up to that. But we know what this team is. We know what they have the potential to be, and we know what they've been through in a lot of the adversity they've come through. And I think that adversity is going to be huge for this team because being able to overcome adversity, I mean, that's playoff football, right? So many people want everything to go perfect in the playoffs, and they complain the second something doesn't go perfect. But the truth is, the teams that win the Super Bowl, the teams that achieve greatness, especially the teams that do it routinely, they have stuff go wrong for them too all the time. The thing is that they overcome that, right? We could sit here and complain about everything that's gone wrong in Cleveland Browns history in the playoffs. We could sit here and complain about Rashad Higgins fumbling a ball out the back of the end zone and that being called a touchback despite the fact that he was hit helmet to helmet by Nick Sorensen. And we could sit here and complain about that and say that cost us an AFC division round game and maybe even a Super Bowl run. But the fact is that we had 2 quarters to overcome that, and we didn't. Championship teams overcome when adversity hits. Not bad teams, but just good teams, average teams. Hey man, that adversity hits. That's it. That's all we got. Hey man, that thing went wrong. We can't win now. Right? You have to be able to win when things go wrong. And that's what this Browns team has proven. You also have to be able to make some small tweaks and adjustments along the way in order to get to your best self during this playoff run. And this is what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about the final playoff tweaks that you want the Cleveland Browns to make for a final playoff run, or for the final run of the season. Because if you want the Browns to continue to go 1-0 every week, well, these are the things that they might have to make these adjustments to, or might have to switch around to do so. The first thing I have here is get D'Anthony Bell involved more, and Grant Delpit, if he is healthy, involved more, and let's try to stay out of these heavy linebacker sets. Like, I understand every once in a while you want to go with linebackers, but I think the truth is that going in base is not as effective as it used to be, simply because we don't have big linebackers anymore. Our linebackers look more like safeties. And if I'm being honest with you, outside of JOK and Taki, our DBs are probably better tacklers, right? Like, so I'd rather have Grant Delpit out there than Tony Fields. I'd rather have D'Anthony Bell out there than Tony Fields. Another adjustment I would love this team to make is just get Mike Ford off the coverage depth chart. I understand Mike Ford is a really good special teamer, and I want him to continue to play that role, but he needs to stay off the coverage depth chart. Like, whatever adjustments you need to make to the roster to make that happen, it needs to happen, because this team cannot be in a situation to where they're a couple of players away from putting him on the field. And like, I'm not trying to be mean, because I think a lot of people have been mean about this and have been kind of disrespectful about it. And it's hard to broach this subject without sounding disrespectful, because, hey, if somebody told me this about me, even if it was the truth, it would feel disrespectful, right? Like, there's no good way of saying this. But I truly believe he's the worst coverage corner on this team. Like, I think he's worse than Halasi. I think he's worse than anybody. Like, he's just not a good coverage corner. And he's a liability every time he's out there. Now, again, he's on the active roster. He's on the depth chart. I understand logistics are logistics. You want him to be out there. He's a great special teamer. Okay. Can we put one more body in between him and starting at corner? Like just one more body. Like I understand Greg Newsome is there, so he don't got to touch the field. And then if Greg Newsome can't go, Cam Mitchell is there, so he don't got to touch the field. Just one more body. Like, can D'Anthony Bell be the third string nickel? You know, if Grant Delpit is healthy, or maybe Ronnie Hickman, or just somebody else. Like, I just would feel much more comfortable with literally any other DB that we have filling that role, because when he's out there, it just breaks the defense, because they don't have to worry about pressure, because they know they can just beat them straight up off the line of scrimmage. And maybe he had a bad run when he was out there, and it was bad luck, and I'm overrepresenting his negative side, and I'll be proven wrong about this in the playoffs. Hope it don't go down to that. Hope I don't got to learn nothing about Mike Ford in the playoffs, to be honest with you, like good or bad. But I would just feel more comfortable if we had one more body in between the possibility of him being out there on defense. Just one more body, right? Like, I understand logistics are logistics, but just the one more body, right? If we got to carry Khalif Elise out there, like, I'm fine with it. I am absolutely fine with it. Another thing that I want the Browns to kind of bring back into the rotation, remember when they were doing 5-man fronts at the beginning of the season, and they would roll to those 5-man fronts whenever they felt like they were getting gashed in the run game, and it would really work, and we would stop the run and kind of stop the bleeding, and kind of use that as a quick killer. Yeah, let's bring that back. Let's bring that back. The reason I think that's a good idea to bring back is because what we learned the last few weeks is that this defensive line has a decent amount of depth, right? We lost Maurice Hurst. We were worried about that, right? We lost some other guys along the line with Obo Okoronkwo. We were worried about that. But what we learned is that, hey, Shelby Harris stepped up. Hey, you know who else stepped up? Maurice Hurst. Not Maurice Hurst. Jordan Elliott stepped up. You know who else stepped up? Alex Wright stepped up. And then Isaiah McGuire showed a little bit of something in this last game. And it had me thinking, like, okay, if we got all of these guys stepping up on the defensive line and all of these guys playing well, we could put them on the field more than often. And again, the return to Grant Delpit would be huge for this, because then you can have a 5-man front, have 2 linebackers, so you can run 5-2, and then have Grant Delpit on the field, so you can be in a base set with 3 linebackers out there, and then still be able to cover and not sacrifice too much. Now, again, you're not going to go to this as a base look or as a thing that you do very often. Every once in a while, like, you probably will pull this thing out 4 times at most if you make a really deep run into the playoffs. But it's something that's really nice to have there. And I would like to see the Browns bring it back, especially against a team like Baltimore, who likes to kind of maul you along the line of scrimmage. I think it would be a great tone setter against a team like that, right? Those real physical teams, Baltimore, Buffalo. If you end up getting the opportunity to play them, I want you to have those 5-man fronts in your back pocket, because I think it'd be something that you could use even against Houston this week. It's something that you will really want to use, because Houston's going to try to kind of control the game on the line of scrimmage. So it's something to keep in mind. We used to do it at the beginning of the season, kind of went away when all these injuries happened, but I think we have the depth again to be able to do it. And I would love to see the Browns do that. Also, like, another point that's kind of adjacent to this point is that using the defensive line depth without necessarily sacrificing snaps from Myles Garrett, because what usually happens is every 3 or 4 drives, every third or fourth drive, Myles Garrett just won't be on the field for a little while. And that's because he's getting his break, and I understand that, and Myles got to stay fresh. Okay, cool. And I feel good about having Alex Wright out there with Za'Darius and having that guy flop in and out with Obo Okoronkwo. You're good there. That's not what I'm necessarily complaining about. But also, I would like it if we can do things like, hey, instead of flipping Za'Darius to the same side as Myles and kind of sacrificing either Myles or Za'Darius to get somebody open, or doing the same thing with Okoronkwo, maybe we can flip and use some of these depth pieces next to Myles, and they're good enough players now that they're not going to be able to fulfill what they need to fulfill, right? They're still going to garner the attention that they need to. And then maybe you, instead of having it be Miles and Za'Darius on the same side, and you're kind of sacrificing Za'Darius in a twist so you can flash Miles or something like that. You can have it be so that Miles can kind of do what he wants one-on-one. You can overload one side. Like, I just think it opens up a lot of opportunities for the Cleveland Browns if you're adding more pieces out there and using more of that depth. Now, again, not something you want to resort to every play. I don't want to see 1,000,000 snaps for Isaiah McGuire or something like that, but I do think it's something that you can rely on a little bit more. Another tweak that I think the Browns are going to have to do is they're going to have to get more out of Elijah Moore and Jerome Ford. Now, these two players have been, Jerome Ford has been a surprise when it comes to the receiving game. And I thought Elijah Moore, the back end of the season, has been a nice surprise. Even before Joe Flacco got in, his production had been ticking up with Deshaun Watson. That carried over to DTR and that carried over to Joe Flacco. So Elijah Moore has been having a good back end of the season. It's great that he's going to be healthy, because we saw what kind of happens to this offense when you don't have him and Amari Cooper. Like, it just gives Joe Flacco no reliable options out there, because nobody can be trusted to be in the spots that they are in, because for whatever reason, Cedric Tillman, man, just isn't in the right spot at the right time most of the times. And we know that defenses are going to key in on David Njoku and Amari Cooper, because they've been getting the press. So if you want to be able to get those guys off of them, you're going to want to hit Elijah Moore more often. You're going to want to get Jerome Ford involved more often. The last thing that I just want to delete entirely from the Cleveland Browns playbook is like 90% of the end arounds. Like, if it's an end around and it involves Marquise Goodwin, I'm generally okay with it. But any of these end arounds that involve Pierre Strong, throw them out. Any of these end arounds that involve Jerome Ford, maybe an end around for Jerome Ford, because he's hit on a couple of those. But any of these end arounds that involve Kareem Hunt, David Njoku, Elijah Moore, just get rid of him. Now, we haven't seen any Elijah Moore end arounds for a very long time, so I doubt we'll see that going forward. But just less end arounds. We haven't been fooling guys. Now, with the play action being a lot more successful with Joe Flacco than it was under any other quarterback, those end arounds might hit a little bit more often, but I just don't want us to become drunk with the end arounds, right? Like, the end around should be in there. You should call maybe one a game, but be real mindful when you're calling it. Like, please don't call them at critical third down moments thinking you're about to get a smackaroo. Like, just use end arounds as bonuses. Like, just, okay, it's 2nd and 10. Let's do an end around. Or it's 2nd and 5. Let's do an end around, right? Like, it's not a pivotal moment of the game. The game's not at the tightest. Like, not at the tightest part. Because when we run these end arounds at very tight parts of the game, it always goes wrong. Always goes wrong. So no end arounds. Like, not no end arounds, but let's be very, very mindful with where we put these end arounds. I know they're going to be in there. I understand why. Like, structurally, it makes sense. If you're going to run a ton of play action, you're going to be able to get some rear side plays. Like, I understand it. I'm not against it philosophically. I'm just saying, let's be mindful. Let's be mindful, because nothing kills the vibe like an end around that loses 7 yards. Nothing kills the vibe. Like, if you are driving down the field and you're moving the ball pretty well, don't do the end. You don't need the end around, right? Now, if you're stymied and you can't move the ball, fuck it. Yeah, do an end around. Don't nobody care about that. But, if you're moving the ball well, don't do the end around. If you got great field position to start, don't do the end around. If you had a holding penalty, don't follow it up with the end around and end up in 2nd and 22. Like, just be mindful of the end arounds. We will take a loss on a screen. We will take a loss on a sack. We will take a loss on a Jerome Ford carry wide zone left. We will take those losses and be all right with it. But something about the end around drives everybody crazy. And I can't say they crazy for feeling that way, because it does drive me crazy when they just go to these end arounds at points where it just doesn't feel advised. We don't got the speed to do it. Like, it doesn't seem like anything that we would be good at. But those are the tweaks that I would love this team to make for the playoff run. Let me know your tweaks in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.